everyone, and welcome to Almost Cancelled. I'm Peter, that is Connor, and we are going to talk about Legion Season 2, Episode 6. It is Chapter 14, so full spoilers for the episode, as always. I mean, if anything in this episode even counts as a goddamn spoiler, I mean, do you know...
If this even counts as an episode.
Do you know, like, there's a point, like, about 5 minutes in when you realise this is going to be the whole episode. It's not going to just cut back to reality at some point, and it's going to be like back to the characters and what's going on. No. This is all, and I think the main point of what the episode really was. I think I wasn't really quite caught onto it until it made its point at the end. Like, I got really quickly that okay, this is probably all happening. This is all him processing the death of his sister. That's what this is. Yeah. But the actual point of it, the actual, like, what are we doing with all these different versions of David? And because that's what we see in this episode. We see a homeless version of David. We see a billionaire version of David. It turns out by the end that some of them link up with the earlier ones. Like, you know, the old homeless guy and the young drug addict seem to be the same timeline. The coffee boy and the billionaire.
Rich one.
Yeah. So some of them link up, of course. And then there's some of the real timeline stuff with his sister and him going to Clockworks at the end. And it's like, okay, so we're seeing all these different things. And obviously at one point, Junkie David gives his whole timeline theory, and you know, we watch so many sci-fi shows about time travel and shit that I'm almost sick of hearing this at this point.
I know.
Of branching timelines, you make a choice, there's something different, and over there, and all these variations.
Do you know what? It's funny. A lot of shows I'll forgive it because I'm like, all right, you need to introduce it to your audience. But on a show like this, where it's been so dense anyway, I feel like it doesn't need to be quite this explained for what is, for Legion standards, a relatively simple concept.
Yeah, I wonder though if it's because the episode itself is presented without any, like, I mean, this just throws you in and you just keep going, and maybe by the end it'd have been fine, I'm not sure, but certainly at that point in the episode it did kind of like, okay, I understand better what I'm seeing now.
Okay.
Because early on it's jumping around between various things. We're getting like 4 or 5 timelines, we're jumping around in time in those timelines. So there was a lot to take in at first, and things are getting quite emotional at one point, near the end, and it's not really until you kind of get the final chunk of it where, you know, the sad music starts playing. It's a good song, by the way, at the end, just for the record. And like, okay, right, I'm getting what it's doing now. And obviously he's dealing with his sister's death, but these sad... Oh, that's it. I think the ending's actually a bit more hopeful than...
Yeah?
There's hope in there. At least I feel some hope in there, because basically at each timeline, things go bad, right, for different reasons. You have him, you know, he's accepted his powers in one, he's the coffee boy, and he helps the lawyers kind of not take the shitty deal, because they're trying to be tricked.
Yep.
Well, they're not trying to be tricked, the other lawyers are trying to trick them, is the correct way of saying that sentence. But he helps them, and that leads to him being a billionaire, right? And we see that he's kind of this cold individual. Amy comes to help, and she's having a pretty shitty life where both her and her husband are cheating on each other. Things aren't going particularly well. It's also implied towards the end that in this timeline the Shadow King is with him, because he sees the Shadow King at one point.
Yeah, it's really, you know, it's this idea that he accepted, because we know the Shadow King is, you know, with him from birth, give or take, you know. So it's,
although not necessarily in all of these timelines, but yes.
No, but you know, assuming that is the standard, right? Is in some of them at least.
Yeah.
Here it's okay. No, he just leans into it, and you know, he talks about, you know, becoming a god, you know, a mouthpiece for God, essentially, which is, you know, very similar. You know, the way he talks about power, it's very similar to what we've heard from the Shadow King.
Yeah, he's very corrupt. He basically just becomes him. I mean, one could debate that by the end of that timeline, he is just the Shadow King.
Yeah.
Because it's kind of his reflection that he sees of him. You know, he sees Farouk in the reflection. So
yeah.
So you've got that. You've got Junkie David. That seems to be the one where he refused any help, just went down this junkie path, and eventually becomes this homeless old man. And we get the Clockwork Orange scene.
Yeah.
Very intense. Because you know what the funny thing was? It's obviously by the time the 4 figures come in, it is, okay, this is Clockwork Orange. But the first shot of him sitting in that tunnel, I mean, that looks like a Clockwork Orange, that shot.
I did the same, and then I was like, oh, okay, we're just doing Clockwork Orange. That's cool.
And I was like, okay, that's fine. It's a little homage to that shot. That's fine. And then 2 seconds later, the 4, you know, shadowy figures with the big
start kicking him and stuff.
And I'm like, and they start talking like Clockwork. I'm like, all right, okay, we're just doing Clockwork Orange. All right.
I'm down for it.
Yeah, but of course that timeline, he actually explodes in that timeline. He has like a psychic explosion.
Yeah, and he sends them somewhere.
He sends them somewhere, but I like the touch that the shadows were still on the ground. So just the long shadows were still there.
Yeah.
Also, I believe his explosion above his head makes an X at one point. I think
really?
I saw that. Yeah,
I didn't care.
There was a lot of things like that. When he was a coffee boy, did you notice the symbol on the wall?
No.
It was a D with like 3 lines inside it.
Okay.
There was lots of little things like that.
There's the old man, in the wheelchair when he gets into the wheelchair.
Yeah, he's bald, and in that timeline, of course, Amy tries to control him by forcing him to take drugs and tries to make him normal. And instead, what happens is he ends up freaking out in front of the police, and he ends up paralyzed because he gets shot. Because the police kind of are attacking him, but then it escalates when she tries to intervene, and then he makes them disappear, the cars. Of course, this is really notable, this scene, because this is where he actually sees the big yellow-eyed demon Shadow King, who we've not seen this season yet. So, and it's like, okay, so in this timeline, she tried to control him, become normal, and that led to this, and she ends up being an old woman, helping him as an old man in his wheelchair, and that's their future in this timeline. Reggie the Billionaire one, Junkie one, of course, ends with eventually. It's actually, we get a glimpse of Kerry. She apparently still works with cleaning up dangerous mutants, because she comes in and splits them in half with a katana.
It's so cool.
It's really cool. In fact, one of the cops gets gets gravitoniumed, as I'll call it.
Yeah,
it's the same effect.
I did the same.
Yeah, it's if you've been watching Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. this season, there's been a telepathic ability. It's very similar, where the body sort of contracts inwards. This was slightly different.
Yeah.
Sorry?
It's a very crumply.
Yeah, it's very sort of kind of stilted and kind of off kilter. But that's the one difference I noticed. This, which did make it a little bit better. A, this show has a little bit more of a budget, but B, it ends with more of a sort of splat.
It does. It's a bit of a it's very squishy, isn't it?
Yeah, it's like a squib going off at the end, which I always enjoy a bit of splatter. I'm not going to lie. When it comes to blood, splatter's what you enjoy.
It's essential.
So so you got all those timelines, and I think it's really notable that the one that's like the idealistic happy one, where he's got a family, he's got kids, and he's he's out in the suburbs and they're in the pool, and it's like the perfect life. That seems to be the one where he never had powers. That seems to be the one where that was just never a thing.
Doesn't it?
Yeah. So it's kind of analysing all the possibilities of his life. Could go, okay, point number 1, does he or doesn't he have powers? Okay, powers then branches off into all these different things, including the real timeline, and then not powers is just happy family. It's perfect life.
I just wanted to say, we're what, 7 odd minutes in here, and we have not talked about the most insane thing yet.
The mouse.
The mouse.
The mouse singing a song.
I don't even know what this show is anymore, but I love it.
He's in an office job, and there's a mouse singing.
And dancing.
And dancing, yes. I mean, dancing often goes with singing.
It does, but they're not, they're not
at the very least, you're swaying a little bit when you're singing.
Yeah, it's fair. So this is, proper dancing.
Show me a singer who's completely still.
I have seen many in a studio, because you have to stay as close to the mic as possible.
Nah, even their hands are moving. Their hands are moving.
No, I've seen them be still. Many a time.
You have to emote. I can't sing without emoting. Not that I can really sing, admittedly, but...
That's why you're not a professional.
Emoting, I have to emote. You have to get into it. You have to feel it in the stomach and the passion.
Yeah, okay.
You basically, what you've been witnessing is soulless monsters.
It's not, it's professionalism.
Soullessnism.
Oh, that's quite a word.
You have no soul. How would you know? Moving on. So, we have all these timelines, and of course, it's very obviously once we get to the him being paralysed, and that's when they all kind of come together, and we've been seeing all these fractured elements. He catches a glimpse of Sid at one point in the homeless timeline early on, before he has the beard, and there's all these different.
It's interesting.
Elements.
It seems like he recognises her, like even in this weird timeline.
Yeah, well, that's because it's not really timelines; it's more him imagining.
No,
timelines.
I get that, but I thought it was an interesting touch that, as far as he's concerned, he doesn't he doesn't show any recognition for anything else except that.
Yeah, doesn't really encounter anything else that you'd recognise, though.
Oh, that's fair. I'm just thinking, Kerry comes up behind him.
Yeah, she kills him from behind, so he would never have had a chance.
That's true.
So yeah, there's not really any other chance in it. Because I think ultimately the point is that the timeline where Amy decided to commit him, is the one that was for the best. Now, it's ended with her death, and I think partly David might feel guilty about that, because the one where she helped him is but I think there's also the sad tinge of this where in every timeline her life is kind of ruined because of him, and I think that's the really sad part of this, because that's the other thing. In the timeline where he has the happy family and kids and he has no powers, he doesn't have Amy. There's no sister.
No, I mean it's possible that he still has a sister. They're just not close. They don't speak to each other anymore, because he's got his own family.
It's possible, but if you remember, like, David only goes to this family because Xavier wants to hide him away. So if he never has powers, then he never meets Amy.
No, it's true.
Theoretically, so I think that's quite interesting. And Kat, why are you being awful? Right. So he's never had powers. He has this happy life, and this kind of sad tinge of like the happiest thing he could want is to not have this. But in the timeline where she has him committed, she does the right thing, even though it's hard for her. And it does put him through a little bit of misery. Not only is he actually understands his powers a lot better, right? He's gained some control. He's aware of what his reality is, as far as he knows, because obviously one of the things we question on this show a lot is that. But at least
it's everything.
I think at this point, though, this is definitely the most clear he's ever been. And he also fell in love, because that's the other thing, is once he gets into Clockworks, we got all this montage of all the various things, but the big prominent factor is Sid, and meeting Sid, and that relationship forming, and now he has someone else. Yeah. And
I'd say it's the best timeline for now, because I think it's worth knowing, we don't see the end we don't know the end of this timeline yet, whereas the others we actually see the end point.
We see the end, yeah, but I think it's, again, he's like sort of like projecting and imagining the end of all these timelines, and I think the danger of going down the dark path and being dangerous, because that's the thing, we see him explode essentially with psychic power here, which I have to imagine on a grand scale is maybe the big thing that's going to happen, that's going to wipe everyone out.
Quite possibly, yeah.
And I think with this timeline, he's going to be guilty. He's going to be sad. He's going to feel like it's his fault. And there's that line from Farouk that he remembers. You make your own reality, which again I think is him feeling guilt. It's him making him feel like he made this happen. This is his reality. He chose this to happen, and because of that, Amy's dead. And I think obviously that's a dark end. It's a very downer of an ending. But I think the hope in there is that ultimately she picked the right one. Like, the right one did happen, and it wasn't just up to him. And I think that's maybe part of what he's maybe going to have to learn, is that it isn't all on him. Like, other people are making choices as well. I feel like that's maybe something he's going to have to learn. But
no, that's true. And obviously, is how those things affect him.
Yeah.
But I noticed a lot of green in this episode.
A lot of green, yeah.
An excessive amount. I found, like things where he's in the dairy company job.
All the boxes are all
just green.
Yeah.
It's like the walls in his house green.
Because it's all not real.
Yeah.
To make it really simple.
Exactly.
They've told us that red is green, green is red. Red means danger, incorrect. Green means go, yes, whatever. But now it's flipped. This is all green because it's not real. And so that's at play. I think just the idea that he has this doubt now that everything's his fault. That's the delusion. That's the thing that's ignoring all the other facts. Like, he's just convinced on this idea. And like last episode, he's where there is just coincidence or there is just happenstance. He is seeing a pattern. He is seeing, this is all me. This is my fault in every timeline.
Yeah, no, that's true. I think that's the beauty of this. This isn't even, these timelines aren't real. They're just his imagination projecting this worst case scenario for everything. Yeah.
So he's convincing himself that everything's his fault always, and he's going to be broken. And I think ultimately, because it's a TV show, and I feel like they're ultimately going to save the day in some way. I expect some sort of like heartbreaking thing where Sid kind of has to wrestle him back from the brink of almost erupting.
Most likely, yeah. That seems plausible.
In his case, literally erupting.
Yes, yeah. It's going to be bad. Clearly.
Yes. So. No, it's and it just cuts to him being held at the end, and you realise this has all just happened. Like, everything that we've just seen, it's all happening in his head, just as he's lying there crying. So we've not actually advanced any further in the last episode. I think I'll praise this quite a bit this episode. I think once the emotional point really hit at the end, and you start thinking about what everything means, it has a lot of weight to it. I also think it compares really well to the one where it was like all in Sid's head, and David was trying to figure things out. This one was a much stronger episode, I thought.
I agree. I think it's funny that we kind of had three of those in a row. Those hyper focused episodes because the last one we had just the stuff with Lenny, and learning that, and that was all just okay, that was three conversations essentially, and that was it. And then the one before was Sid's head. It's very much been, I don't know, we've barely moved in the past 3 weeks in terms of the timeline.
And for the most part, that's fine. I think the Sid head one comes down a little bit compared to the others because it felt like we didn't learn anything new necessarily. It felt like it was okay, we're going through these motions and some of the scenes are really effective, but it was probably the least fulfilling up until that point. It's still the least fulfilling one of the season, I think.
Oh, agreed, yeah.
This one, I think, has a big dramatic point, and it really is him struggling. And I also like it because I think Amy's death was effective last week, but I feel like having her not be around and then just showing up to die feels a little bit on the weeks, almost like they're disrespecting the character. I think giving her this time the week after to show how important she is to David and how important she is in his life in any capacity,
it definitely
is good for her. Yeah, it's good for making her death feel even more important. So
still could have done with some stuff before as well, but this helps.
But I think so. It adds to her death, it adds to the sacrifice, it adds to the pain that David's feeling. It had some big dramatic points, and kind of also showed how the Shadow King is a factor in multiple timelines and how he's always around. So
and just fantastic filmmaking again.
Yeah,
the way it was cut in between everything seamlessly.
Yeah, different aspect ratios for all the timelines, all that stuff, the usual stuff.
I think it's worth noting the fantastic acting as well of all the various versions of him.
Yeah, David really doing a various number of performances with this, and notable that Amy's kind of the same in each one. Obviously, she makes different decisions in each one, but ultimately
she's at a slightly different stage, but she's still the same person at the core.
Yeah, with the exception maybe being when it's like far in the future and a lot of other things have happened for her to get to that point. That's when she's completely changed. But up until that point, yeah, she's pretty much all the sort of relatively present day parts of the timelines. She's kind of the same.
Yeah, give or take, she's kind of just there.
But yeah, but no. So the one where she decided to have him committed, even though that was a hard choice, is the one where that was the right one, I guess.
Do you think the reason that she's always the same, is because David can't comprehend her being anything else? Especially now it'd be almost be like disrespecting her memory to change who she was, and even in those other timelines.
Yeah, I think so. And when I said that she is different, maybe in the future parts of the timelines when it's been a long time has passed and so many events have changed her, that's always been at the effect of him. It's always something to do with him that's went down this different path. It's almost a little bit egotistical. He's kind of seeing himself as the center of the universe, and everything's kind of erupting around
definitely,
him.
Yeah.
But being that this is all in his head, that makes sense. But again, that's why I'm saying that maybe part of the lesson that he needs to learn is that he isn't the center of the universe. Other people are making decisions. Other people are also affecting things.
No, definitely.
So, yeah. So that's it's actually a really good episode. It's one where I wasn't sure how to feel about it in the first 5-10 minutes. Where I'm like, okay, we're doing, and it's probably because that Sid episode ultimately was just kind of okay. I was kind of worried that this was going to feel the same way.
I was a bit more into this from the start because whereas that was a loop, this was just clearly just this is a bunch of different strands that are going to come together. So I think I had a bit more faith in this as these separate elements.
I mean, I should have, because the show typically hits high, but it was so similar in the sense that it was this focused, all in the head kind of episode.
This concept episode, essentially.
But the more it ramped up, and by the time I got to the end, I was into the emotion of it all. So I think it was really effective in that sense. So
plus, this one gave us a dancing and singing mouse.
And I'm sure there's many other little Easter eggs that we may have missed. Obviously, there's some obvious ones, like I'm looking like Xavier. That's first and foremost. Lots of little things like that. But I'm sure there's some that we missed. So by all means, do let us know in the comments, like and subscribe, all the other usual things. Support us on patreon.com/MailFuzzTV, link in the description. But otherwise, that is us. So thank you once again for watching or listening. We always appreciate it. Keep watching TV, guys. Have you got any vanilla?